engaging with the community since 1970. This is WIS Awareness with Billie Jean Shaw.
Happy Sunday to you. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Awareness. I'm your host, Billie Jean Shaw. Today, I'm excited about this episode because we are breaking down the Gullah Geechee language. If you're not familiar with that, it's an English-based Creole language often spoken in the coastal areas of South Carolina. So, for example, when you go to Charleston, you may notice that people are speaking Gullah Geechee. But if you don't really understand what I'm talking about just yet, take a look at this clip.
Hello? Hey, girl, what's going on? Yeah. I know what you to call me for that for. Man, I been and did that. Man, the boy ain't tell you I did. I been going get him. Yeah. Man, he ain't make no sense what he do. He carry on so. Hold on. These them both collected to call me, man. Hold on. Hello? Yes, this is Jessica. How may I help you? Uh-huh. Sure. No, I wasn't aware. Wow. Well, unfortunately, I can't take care of that right now. Is there anything else that I can do? Okay, yeah, sure. Give me a call back tomorrow. That will be fine. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Cool. Them boys say I owe them $12,000. Where I can get them from?
Joining us in the studio right now is the creator behind that video, the Geechee scholar, Dr. Jessica Berry. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I love the presence that you have on social media because you are so dedicated to introducing people and educating them about the Gullah Geechee language. We talked about what it was a little bit at the beginning of the show, but for people who may not be familiar, tell us exactly what Gullah Geechee means and what is the language?
Absolutely. So Gullah Geechee people, Gullah Geechee culture, Gullah Geechee language, we are descendants of the enslaved Africans who were brought over during the transatlantic slave trade. We were brought over for our knowledge on how to cultivate rice. And so we were isolated and we were able to ultimately preserve what is the closest thing to Africa we can find in the United States. So we kept a lot of those African languages like Yoruba, Mende, Hitu, blended them with English. And now we have the Gullah Geechee language, which is a Creole language variety.
You grew up in Charleston, right?
I grew up in Hugie, which is right outside of Charleston.
Okay, a little small town near Charleston. And so you grew up speaking Gullah Geechee. Your family members spoke that. You went to school with people who spoke the Gullah Geechee language. And it is indeed a language. However, I hear some people saying you're not speaking correctly. That's incorrect. Oh, you may sound ignorant. What do you have to tell us about dispelling some of the myths surrounding the Gullah Geechee culture and language?
Absolutely. It's a myth. Gullah is a language. It's recognized by linguists. It's written about and published about by several people who've studied the language over time. A lot of people consider it broken English because you hear parts of English and parts of our African heritage languages blended in there. And so to dispel that myth, it is a language. It has rules, structure. We can't just say whatever we want. There are rules in there, and as speakers, we know what the rules are because of how close we are within our community.
From the WIS First Alert Weather Center, the National Weather Service has issued a freeze warning effective until 10 a.m. Monday for the counties of Calhoun, Central Orangeburg, Clarendon, Fairfield, Kershaw, Lee, Lexington, Newberry, Northwestern Orangeburg, Richland, Saluda, Southeastern Orangeburg, and Sumter in South Carolina, and a freeze watch effective until 9 a.m. Tuesday for the counties of Calhoun, Central Orangeburg, Clarendon, Fairfield, Kershaw, Lee, Lexington, Newberry, Northwestern Orangeburg, Richland, Saluda, Southeastern Orangeburg, and Sumter in South Carolina. For the latest weather information anytime, go to WISTV.com or download the WIS TV weather app by searching WIS First Alert Weather in your app store.
When I started my doctoral work at Louisiana State University,
from the WIS First Alert Weather Center,
Creole course that I was
the National Weather Service has issued a freeze warning effective until 10 a.m. Monday for the counties of Calhoun, Central Orangeburg, Clarendon, Fairfield, Kershaw, Lee, Lexington, Newberry, Northwestern Orangeburg, Richland, Saluda, Southeastern Orangeburg, and Sumter in South Carolina, and a freeze watch effective until 9 a.m. Tuesday for the counties of Calhoun, Central Orangeburg, Clarendon, Fairfield, Kershaw, Lee, Lexington, Newberry, Northwestern Orangeburg, Richland, Saluda, Southeastern Orangeburg, and Sumter in South Carolina. For the latest weather information anytime, go to WISTV.com or download the WIS-TV weather app by searching WIS First Alert Weather in your app store.
Because it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. How precious is that? South Carolina has something so unique. And I think we should do the work. And I've been really adamant about doing the work to make sure that we're in the forefront of conversations around education, supporting our kids, testing, assessments, classroom reading. How do we help them as they are bilingual? They speak two languages. So what does that mean for them in the classroom?
Yeah,
how do we accommodate
can we support them?
How can we support them?
Yeah.
Where's the funding to support them so that we can get these test scores up and we can see our kids continue to do well? They're going to do well regardless, but I definitely think that my platform is one to bring awareness to and help us to work toward giving kids access and information about Gullah that I wish I had when I was in school. No one talked about being Gullah Geechee, so let's talk about it now.
And growing up in the Low Country.
Yeah, we didn't have lessons in school. We didn't have people come in and talk to us about it. So it's really important now that schools across the corridor, schools across the state, right, are intentional about celebrating this gem.
In addition to your work on social media, creating that platform, and you being in the community, you also have released a book.
Yes.
The Gullah Geechee Little Book. We're showing it right now on the screen. Tell us more about that.
So the Little Gullah Geechee book, A Guide for the Kamya, it came about because of my work with Charleston County School District in developing the first Gullah Geechee professional development for educators. They had a lot of questions about what is Gullah, what is the culture, what is the language, what should we look for, what do we do, what do we not do. And so I wrote this book as a quick guide for those coming into our state, not knowing who we are or what we offer, to be able to pick up and be like a quick reference for them and hopefully spark their interest to learn more, to go grab some of the other more in-depth reference tools that are available.
I love that, and it's really a cute little book too. You can just put it in your pocket, pop it out at any time and refer to it. Since you created this platform and you've been on this mission to educate people across the state and country about the Gullah Geechee language, what has been the response?
The response has been overwhelmingly positive. I've had the opportunity to partner with some of the leading agencies like the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor Commission, Charleston County School District, second largest district in the state. Just last weekend, worked with the International African American Museum. The response has been positive in saying that it's important that all of us kind of come on board platforms like this to have conversations, bring awareness to the fact that Gullah Geechee is still alive, and then hopefully spark more conversations about how we get the resources to support our students and our children. So overwhelmingly positive, and people always come out with more questions like, gosh, this is so unique, or this sounds like, you know, people from Jamaica, or it sounds like Guyanese, and they make the connections, and it bridges those sort of gaps even between Black cultures across the country.
I'm so glad you said that, because I remember my first trip to Jamaica, I was able to understand everything that one of our drivers was saying. And I'm like, why do I feel like I'm in Charleston? Why do I feel like I'm talking to some of my family members? But it's all connected.
It's all connected.
It's like that. It's like the thread that connects all of us together.
Well, because the transatlantic slave trade is the thread, right? Our ancestors came from Africa, and they weren't just dropped off in Charleston. They were also taken to the various islands, the sea islands of South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Jamaica, Guyana, all of those areas. And so what we see is that thread of very similar grammar structures that exist across those areas and languages. And so when we go to Jamaica, or even when I was young, people would always say, what island you from? And I'm like, Charleston.
Right.
Right. But they hear the connections because we're very similar. We come from the same roots of Africa.
I love that. Dr. Berry, thank you so much for coming on the show. Tell people how they can stay informed with your upcoming events and just to stay connected with you to learn more.
Absolutely. Follow me online on Instagram. I'm at the Geechee Scholar or Hey Jessica Berry. I would love to see you. Also, Hey Jessica Berry on YouTube, where I post a lot of informative information. And upcoming, the Okra Soup Foundation is my new nonprofit where we are focusing on children and working toward creating those accommodating spaces for them.
The Okra Soup Foundation.
The Okra Soup Foundation.
And what's the website for that?
okrasoupfoundation.org.
All righty, we'll make sure to post this information online as well, everyone. We look forward to having Dr. Jessica Berry back on Awareness, because you definitely brought some awareness today about our culture that we will not let be forgotten. So thank you so much. All right, and still to come on the show after the break, we discuss law enforcement relationships within the Black community. Up next, I sit down with Columbia's Deputy Chief Melron Kelly, who is the new president of the South Carolina chapter of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, also known as NOBLE. We'll be right back. To Awareness, we're now at the Columbia Police Department's headquarters, where we're going to sit down one-on-one with Deputy Chief Melron Kelly. He's just been sworn in as the new president of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. The South Carolina chapter here is known as NOBLE. Here's what he has to say about the importance of that organization and the importance about him being president. Well, welcome to the show, Deputy Chief Melron Kelly. We appreciate you joining us for Awareness again, and congratulations on being elected as the new president of the South Carolina chapter of NOBLE. So if you can give our viewers a little bit more information about what NOBLE stands for and the importance of the organization.
Definitely. So NOBLE is the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. It was started in 1976, where a group of police chiefs from all over the nation were at a symposium, and at that symposium, the African-American police chiefs of that group formed what we now know as NOBLE, and they talked about how we can encourage professional development and safety in communities of color.
How important is it for Black law enforcement officers to have that support with each other across the country under an organization like NOBLE?
African-American police officers, like all police officers, hold a unique position in society. However, being an African-American police officer, sometimes you're not forced, but you're assumed to choose between black and blue. So it helps us navigate the world of, or imaginary world in some cases, of those societal issues and those departmental issues that some officers face. And you definitely need a voice of philosophies and lived experiences as you deal with those things.
And as the new president, and we'll obviously touch on the difference between, choosing between black and blue and what difficulties, if any, may come for that for people of color in law enforcement. But back to NOBLE, what will your role be as president? What are some of the things that you will be putting in place for the South Carolina chapter?
Definitely. So a little bit of history of South Carolina's chapter of NOBLE. We've previously had a chapter in 1997. Chief Reuben Greenberg, former chief of Charleston Police Department, was our first inaugural chapter president of NOBLE, and it kind of faded away. So we reinvigorated it here in Columbia, and I was elected president last month, and we will have one chapter for the state, but many members throughout the state. So right now we have members throughout the state. We're focusing right now on membership and how we can focus on our mission. So our mission in NOBLE in South Carolina is to focus on our young people in the community, building those relationships, talking about police-community relations, and really focusing on how we can develop better citizens. On the internal side of the house, we want to focus on those younger officers, younger in tenure, and professional development, and what those societal and internal issues that affect law enforcement. We really want to focus on those things for the best outcomes for everyone. While our name is Black Law Enforcement Officers, we welcome anyone from any shade, creed, or color. However, we know that there are some specific issues in the African American communities that are unique to us, that are mostly cultural, and we want to talk about how we navigate that for the safety of all.
Thank you so much for explaining to us what NOBLE is and everything that you do. Now, I know this is specifically for law enforcement officers, but is there anything the community can do, regular citizens, to support NOBLE?
Definitely. So the great part about it is anyone can join NOBLE. We have several different levels of membership. You have your regular members. That's any police officer above the rank of lieutenant can join. You have associate members. Those any police officers at any rank below lieutenant, and supporting members. Our supporting members are our community members that want to join and listen to and take part of the trainings that we offer. So it's for everyone. This is a community effort. I think we're a voice of the community. However, we need all those voices to pour into us in order to make better outcomes.
All right, Deputy Chief, thank you. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. And Deputy Chief Melron Kelly, thank you so much for sticking with us and continuing this conversation. Before the break, we talked about how some people feel like if you're a person of color, a black officer, that you have to choose between being black or being a part of the blue. You have been involved in law enforcement since you've been the young age of 13. Okay, so you grew up in this. How has this been for you, growing up in North Columbia, probably around people who didn't really have that trust between law enforcement, growing up in the black community? How do you deal with that?
I think lived experiences is the best way I would describe it. Knowing that you want the best outcome for anyone, even if they've broken the law, and how we can make society better. We know that most people are good, right? However, there's a small segment of the population that is responsible for a majority of the bad things that happen. And recognizing that as an older police officer now, I didn't realize that as a young police officer, but having mentors and people to help guide my career, both internally and those community members, helped me make the best decisions for everyone involved. And I think sometimes we don't think that way as police officers. That's why we have to give community a voice. And it's so important to give them voice in how we're policing, where we're policing, and the policies that we develop and execute. Give them voice in how we're doing our business.
When you see the stories about Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, more recently Tyree Nichols, and then you go out in your community and people are talking about it, and then they're like, well, you're a black officer. How are you still supporting this profession knowing that this is happening across the country? What are some of the messages that you send to people who believe it may be a challenge?
Yeah, it's easy for us in society to paint with such a broad brush. While there are over 18,000 police agencies in this nation, they account for, the ones that do negative things account for less than 1% overall. So we have to, one, focus on the good work that's being done, but two, really facing those departments and officers who have issues and saying what's wrong. I think that's where we're at in law enforcement now, whereas pre-George Floyd, you may not have heard a police executive calling out another department or chief. I think for the need of societal betterness, we need to do those things and implement trainings and programs to make sure it doesn't happen here. Memphis, we wouldn't want that to happen here. We're very transparent in what we do and how we do it, and we invite the public in to just see how we're doing and what changes we should make. I think those are some of the differences that I'm seeing.
As a Columbia native and now Deputy Chief of the Columbia Police Department, what are some programs that are in place, or some things that you have done personally to help bridge that gap in the community?
For me, the Beyond the Badge program, where officers who graduate from the academy, instead of hitting the street immediately, they spend a week of community service at the soup kitchen at Children's Hospital, reading to kids, just finding out how we live here in Columbia, because we hire a lot of people from outside the area and region, just finding out what we do best here in Columbia. The other part of that is our Justice Ambassadors program. A lot of police departments, probably 2 years ago, started these citizen review councils, and we have one here at the police department. They're all made of adults, but we wanted to start something where the youth of our city had a voice too, so we called them the Justice Ambassadors, where they come in bi-monthly and tell us how we're doing and what needs to change and what their views of law enforcement are. I think those, while incremental steps, help teach us as well in making a better police department.
Those are all good points. And some of the things that I've heard just from obviously being from the black community is that I don't see a lot of officers that look like me, that represent me, that may understand if they're coming into my area, my neighborhood, responding to a call.
One, we're definitely hiring. We want our department to be as diverse as our city is. And we want people to be policed by folks that look like them. But whether you're black or white, I want officers that are policing constitutionally, policy-wise, and doing the right thing. However, it means something to me to know that someone that looks like me is interested in this profession. Ralph Mims and George Eliezer were our first two African-American police officers in the city. They were assigned to walk Millwood Avenue, Hardin Street corridors. And look how far we've come, but while still recognizing our past, we know that there are things that we have to do to improve the future. And one of those things is programs like Noble, and also our recruiting efforts, just to know that we want a society and community in Columbia that's better and more transparent and progressive as well as it relates to how we want to police.
Deputy Chief, thank you so much. You mentioned that the department is hiring for people who are watching and are now curious how they can come work alongside with you. What's the information that they need to know?
Definitely. So the easiest way for us is you get online. You can actually fill out an application there. You can schedule a ride along. We'll be hiring some interns this summer, paid internships for college students as well. Just come tour the department, talk to a recruiter, and check us out.
All righty. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate Deputy Chief Melron Kelly coming on Awareness again and giving all of that great information and insight. And of course, all this information will be posted online at wistv.com/awareness. When we come back, we're going to wrap up for the week. Thanks for tuning in to Awareness. We would like to give a big thank you to Deputy Chief Melron Kelly for talking about his new role as president with the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, the South Carolina chapter, and also talking about bridging the gap between Black law enforcement officers and the Black community. And of course, a huge thank you to Dr. Jessica Berry for explaining to us the roots, the importance of the Gullah Geechee culture and the language. Keep in mind, it is not incorrect. It is not ignorant. If you can speak Gullah Geechee, you are bilingual and you should be celebrated for keeping the culture alive. I'll see you next week for Awareness. Thank you so much for tuning in.